Hello everyone, welcome. We'll get started because otherwise, we'll end up taking too much time in your evenings and you want to enjoy your Friday evening. So my name is Heini Parsons. I'm here as the Co-Vice President of EAROPH Australia. So EAROPH stands for Eastern Regional Association for Planning and Human Settlements, which is quite a mouthful. Some of you also know me in my role as the team leader for placemaking at City of Launceston. So thank you very much for coming today at this workshop event that we call Bite the Night. I'll just introduce very briefly what EAROPH is about to give you a little bit of an insight, a bit of a glimpse. But before that, I also wanted to do the acknowledgement of country. So in this case, City of Launceston and EAROPH, wish to do the acknowledgement of country because these lands are situated in Tasmania on the convergence of Lake Hila, the North Esk River, and Plipatumila, the South Esk River, and Kanamaluka, the Tamar Estuary. I acknowledge and pay respect to the Palawa people, the original and continuing owners of the land on which we meet. And I think it's also quite important to recognise that gastronomy comes from the land, and for tens of thousands of years the people would come to this confluence of the rivers, meet between the different groups and exchange great offerings. So EAROPH already gave the big long mouthful of what it is in terms of an acronym, but the most important thing is to remember this: a non-governmental, multi-sectoral organisation, has private sector, a bit of public, academic sector as well, a lot of professionals, and was established to foster the exchange of insights and experiences among countries in the areas of planning and human settlements in particular, and housing. The EAROPH region, which you'll see now, is the Asia Pacific. This EAROPH is also a UN affiliate professional organisation, and the real goal is to have a better understanding of human settlements. What your towns, your cities, encourage excellence in planning, development and management to improve the quality of life and sustainability of the places we call home. So EAROPH 2022 has the following members, active members, so Australia, and we've got 3 members here of EAROPH. Mia, there at the table, that welcomed you, a former international president of EAROPH as well, and we've also got John Holland as well. The Pacific chapter encompasses Fiji, etc., and Indonesia, the Philippines, South Korea, Japan, Malaysia, where the headquarters are situated, and Pakistan and Nepal. The actual organisation itself goes back to the 1950s and was a sort of offshoot of the International Housing and Planning Association, which was set up by none other than Ebenezer Howard, the Garden City movement person. So, being involved in the UN, we talk a lot about the SDGs, and they become quite a guiding principle. A lot of what EAROPH stands for as well can be encapsulated in number 11, Sustainable Cities and Communities. It's also a lot about the new urban agenda, which came a bit after a year of the approval of the SDGs in 2016. But what does all of this mean? I mean, the SDGs are nice words, but it also is about keeping track of how we're doing in terms of our cities and towns, but more importantly, the people that live there. And the pandemic has aggravated the life of many people, and we should always keep that in mind, and we should always strive to make better places for everyone. Our vision here at EAROPH Australia is really to seek fair, just and sustainable human settlements within the context of flourishing, healthy, natural world, champions of change, and we wish to connect and really bring different groups and different ideas and different people together. And that's why we have these events, normally associated with our annual general meeting. And this time we're here in beautiful, historic Launceston. And it's also, for me, as a short anecdote, that I came to be part of EAROPH in 2017 as part of a conference which I was presenting about the Solomon Islands, and I ended up at the table of Compass Housing, and there was also some EAROPH members associated with that, and this was Nobu in Melbourne. So my original association already with EAROPH was about food, and every international event at EAROPH always has food and dinners as part of the exchange. So thank you very much. I'll introduce you now to Linda, and to give her due credit, I'm going to read her great inspiring bio. I'll just update this. 1 second. Okay, here it loads. So thank you everyone. Here's Linda Jones. So she's based in Launceston, and she's an engagement consultant who works across Australia, supporting councils and communities on their future plans, helping them move from uncertainty to purpose. Recent assignments in her home state include the engagement program for the development of the tourism plan, the Tasmania's World Heritage Area, the operational model for transforming the West-Northwest employment system, and the community involvement in the interpretation of the Highfield Historic Site at Stanley. And Linda also co-facilitates the residentials of the Tasmanian Leaders Program. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Linda.
Hello. Before we start the forum, I'm going to make a statement that's to do with the topic that we are discussing this afternoon for the next 4 hours. And when the statement's up, I'd just like you to individually reflect and think of one word that relates to that statement from your perspective. So pause, reflect, get your word, and then share it with everyone else at your table. And then at the end of a round robin there, pick one that you'd like to share with the rest of this entire group. Are we okay with this? All right, here we go. This is the statement. You'll get the hang of it by the time we get there. Evening. What can it be? The next one? Economy. Quietest person gets to read it at the end, so come on. What will it be? The evening economy is more than gastronomy. Your word, share, take it in turns. 3 minutes. But why?
Well, because we think that it's a gathering, it's fun, it's a shared experience.
Third place.
Excellent. Right, who else?
Opportunity.
Opportunity, okay, and colour that in a little bit for me.
So, in Lonnie was sort of saying that there's currently more that could be done. So a lot of it is just naturally food related, but there's a lot more opportunity there for us.
Excellent. Hello?
Oh, it's a mix of two words, connection and opportunity. We prefer to say socialization.
Socialisation?
Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. Anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, it's meeting people and exploring opportunities. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a mix of both.
Meeting people and supporting needs.
Connecting with the people.
Yes, yes. Okay, and who's left?
That was us. We had experience, which kind of drew together like dinner and a show and experiences, and the requirement that it feels safe after dark as well.
Yeah, like your experience in the place.
Probably we'll find that our work is done here now today, but we'll revisit it right at the end, okay?
And the amount of money we're going to save in catering, wasn't it?
Yeah. Okay.
I'm still hungry.
Yeah, I thought that's always in catering.
The purpose, there's yummy things coming. The purpose of this gathering this afternoon is to discuss how we understand, transform and experience an evening economy that responds to the entire system, not just the food and drink system, but the entire system. The system that creates it, maintains it, uses it, finds it helpful, useful, and loads of fun, usually. But more to the system than the food and drink. Now, the first half of the afternoon, we're going to hear from local, national, and international speakers. It is a real treat, an absolute treat. In the second half, we'll be working on your thoughts and ideas around the vision you have for your city as far as the evening economy goes, and what actions you'd like to see happen. So actions around adaptive challenges, technical issues, policy reforms. There's a whole backpack of things that need to be done around establishing an evening economy that's thriving. We'll finish with a panel discussion. I see some of the panel members now, and wrap up just in time to go off and have a drink downstairs in Civic Square at the night market. Yeehaw! Now, not only is it a treat to hear the speakers you're going to hear, so I've heard all of them except Paul. They're just exceptional, brilliant, passionate people that you will love on screen. But it's a treat and fabulous for you to actually be here with the people in this room. And this is an opportunity for you to get to know them, to hear their thoughts and ideas, their experience in relation to evening economies, and also, and importantly, their perspectives. So be curious, ask questions, be present. I'd like to say this is a flight mode event with the phones, but I won't be that rude, I'll be much politer. But be present so that you hear from these exceptional people who have fronted up with their time, and they are exceptional, a treat. But also with each other who have fronted up with your time as well, because the night economy matters. Mikel Acuto and Anna Edwards. Now, Mikel is the director of the Melbourne Centre for Cities and Professor of Urban Politics at the University of Melbourne, where he also works as the Associate Dean in Research for the Faculty of Architecture, Building and Planning. So he's had a life before academia, working at the World Bank and European Commission, and he specialises in questions of urban governance and globalisation of cities. Importantly, he's a star performer at the City of Melbourne Nighttime Australia Research Council, Economy Advisory Committee, and Chief Investigator for the Australian Research Council Night Shift Program. Now, Anna is a PhD candidate at the Melbourne Centre of Cities, researching the nighttime economy in Australia with a particular focus on nighttime labour market trends, and government initiatives. She is actually an expert in this. Her whole career's virtually been around it. She's been involved in researching and measuring the size of the nighttime economy in the UK and Australia for over a decade. So, Jaime.
Well, hi everyone from Melbourne. My name is Mikel Acuto. I'm director of the Melbourne Centre for Cities.
And my name is Anna. I am PhD candidate here at the Centre for Cities.
And first and foremost, a big apologies for not being with you in Tasmania. So we're really missing out on that one. We thought we'd pre-record a bit of a few thoughts to get the conversation going on the nighttime economy and biting the night. So first of all, hello from Melbourne. very importantly for us, we'd like to acknowledge that we're doing this from Wurundjeri country, so we would like to acknowledge the elders past and present and emerging, and invite you to do the same in Tasmania or wherever you're watching this. And what we thought we'd do for By the Night was give you a little bit of our 2 cents, I guess, on the nighttime economy. Where is it at in Australia after 2 years of pretty tough conditions, and try and connect that to the theme of the conference on gastronomy and I guess the going out economy and the issues that go around food and eating at night. So going with that, I'm shamelessly just going to throw it to Anna first on, so what's the NTE? Where does it come from? What about it in Australia?
Yes, so in terms of nighttime economy, there are a huge number of definitions. Within Australia, it's most commonly referred to as economic activity that happens between the hours of 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. Generally, although we kind of look at the nighttime economy more broadly, most commonly the focus is on the core nighttime economy, so defined as food, drink and entertainment. So within Australia, the food, drink and entertainment sector employs around 1 million people across about 114,000 businesses, and it generates around $135 billion per year. I mean, we're looking at figures from a couple of years ago, and there's been quite a shift as a result of the pandemic, but that gives you a kind of rough idea as to what is involved. I suppose initial interest in the nighttime economy came about in the UK as a result of like trying to regenerate high streets in the kind of 70s, 80s, and over in Europe. And then that kind of, some of those kind of policies were kind of moved over mobility kind of to Australia, and probably kind of in the late 90s in Adelaide, there were kind of signs of kind of interest in the nighttime economy and using the night to kind of to activate the city. And I suppose one other kind of, in around 2005, the Melbourne policy for the 24-hour economy city was initiated, and that was published in 2010. So that was really one of the earliest kind of nighttime economy specific policies that kind of came about in Australia. However, since then, there's been a huge amount of interest. So we've got, here in Melbourne, we have the nighttime economy chairman of the night and the committee. And we have New South Wales 24-hour economy commissioner, and all across Australia, everywhere, kind of Newcastle, Parramatta, Canterbury, Bankstown. There's kind of they're developing action plans and strategies, and I think it's particularly important kind of as we come out of the pandemic. So whereas kind of back in the kind of 90s in the UK we were looking at regenerating town centres, now we're looking at reactivating cities kind of post pandemic and how to get people back into the city.
Definitely. I think one of the interesting elements there is that it has really taken off, and it was taking off just pre-pandemic. It has really become sort of a popular theme of policy and discussion, both in academia, sort of the emergence of night studies on nighttime economy conferences, but really with the practitioners, with the city leaders. But also it's a fairly fuzzy reality, exactly as you put it. We could sort of put a time 6 to 6 or 8 to 8, and that tends to be, but then as New South Wales does, we could talk about the 24/7 city and the 24-hour economy, and that sort of instead you bringing the nighttime economy as just a continuation of the day, or vice versa potentially, but in a sense the city that never stops. There's the reality as sort of you've done plenty on we tend to focus a lot on the going out economy and the core, but those numbers are potentially just a speck of a much broader economy of cities at night time in Australia. So there might be a vast amount of people. So in the UK, for instance, the largest numbers of people that work at nighttime are not operators of bars, are nurses and logistics workers and truck drivers and so forth. We rarely talk about security services. We really talk about those don't work and live at nighttime, homelessness. So in a sense there's a lot about the terminology, I think, and there's a lot about what EAROPH as a company originally had talked about, the shades of night, and the fact that the night isn't a thing, is many different shades of different things. So to throw it on something that we're seeing in Melbourne in the Nighttime Economy Committee and the work that we do is a growing emphasis on the twilight economy and the transition between the daytime economy and the nighttime economy, and what does a twilight precinct or plan looks like. You alluded to this, so what has the pandemic done to all of this, and what did we learn from the last couple of years?
So I suppose the pandemic has had a really has been really impactful on the workforce in particular. So within kind of the core nighttime economy, so food, drink and entertainment, quite often it's a very highly casualised workforce, quite often low pay, kind of poor career pathways, but they're also very much kind of customer facing roles. And so when we had all the lockdowns, it was a lot of people lost their jobs because they weren't able to do those things anymore. So across the world, the International Labour Organization has estimated that around 18 million people working in hospitality lost their jobs within the first kind of few months of the pandemic. So enormous number of people lost their jobs. However, I think kind of as we come out of the pandemic, we're very much kind of looking at, as I mentioned, kind of using the night to reactivate the city, and very much as a draw card to get people to come back in. To come back in during the day into the city, into the offices, and then stay into the twilight and enjoy the city at night and all that it offers. And there has been talk as well about kind of, a lot of people will have heard kind of that we're moving from potentially from CBDs or central business districts to central entertainment or experience districts. So kind of it really has a potential to shift the purpose of some of these things at night. So.
I think one of the things that struck me was, if you're working in the space and you have been working like you've done for quite a few years before the pandemic crisis, there was that feeling of this is all going to crumble down, that the nighttime economies have been so impacted by the crisis, by lockdowns, by social distancing, by the lack of availability and functionality of a business that can't do the numbers that they were doing before. And I guess taking an international perspective on that, actually the pandemic, if anything, on the one hand, has really cemented a community of advocates and scholars and practitioners on this. And a really good example is the Global Nighttime Recovery Plan, that it fundamentally has been done by a group of advocates and people that really stepped into the crisis and went, we need to keep it going in some format. But also that throughout the pandemic and just at the beginning of it, we've seen the continuing and the sprawling still of night mayors. We've got a night czar because James Young likes that title, or a night chairman, and so forth. But the reality is these things haven't gone away. That was very tangible for us. One of the election debates for the Lord Mayor of Melbourne, with all the candidates having a nighttime proposal on it, whether it was copying the New York model, setting up as we did a night chairman, and needing a nighttime economy, night festivals. So it's still a lively and busy issue. And as you alluded to, for instance, our Melbourne experience is that throughout the crisis was the linchpin for that governance innovation. True, we were one of the first cities to do this in Australia, but also true that theme had been fairly dormant for a decade. And bringing and creating a committee that has this discussion, that has the operators and the advocates and the arts and humanities involved and so forth, really speaks to the fact that it hasn't gone away because of the crisis. If anything, the crisis has been a reason for it to be stronger. I guess from that perspective, any thoughts on, to get to the point, and the last point for us, on what our friends in Launceston should think about when we talk about Bite the Night and the overlap between gastronomy and nighttime economy?
Yes. So I suppose, as you say, there's been a huge amount of latent demand, and I think the night is as important as it ever has been, or more important than it ever has been. Within Tasmania itself, so the food subsector within the night, so kind of cafes, restaurants and takeaway services, the number of establishments grew by a third between 2015 and 2020. So it's the latest data that we have. So you can see that it's kind of particularly important within Tasmania itself. But there's a number of kind of different trends, I suppose, that have been occurring kind of before and during the pandemic. So there's growing interest in kind of healthy eating and local produce, which I think is particularly relevant to Tasmania. There's been kind of an increased demand for takeaway services, ghost kitchens, delivery services, that kind of thing. But also outdoor dining. Outdoor dining is a big thing that's kind of happened everywhere, and I think a really positive change that's here to stay in many places, which is fantastic. And there's also been a number of so much innovation. So a lot of the businesses that were kind of operating pre-pandemic kind of had to change. They had to innovate to adapt to the pandemic. But we found that kind of a lot of those kind of changes are here to stay. So for example, things like contactless kind of table ordering and that type of thing. So I think there's just a huge amount of change at the moment and innovation within the sector, and it's actually quite an exciting time, I think, for everybody from all perspectives.
Yeah, I think that the first of all, the interesting thing there is that it pushes you again to recognize the importance of the going out economy, gastronomy, food services, and food subsector, but do it in connection with the bigger picture. Even just thinking of the logistics behind the push for delivery and the push for innovation in how spaces in restaurants operate outside of the restaurants rather than inside. So one of the things that we do here, we've got a new project that is starting up literally just now in the next month in Melbourne called Night Shift, and we're really pushing for an imagination of the nighttime economy that goes beyond the core, that takes into account, in a sense, both the other work that sets up all of this, the logistics of restocking supermarkets, for instance, the invisible work, the cleaners, the vast amount of cleaners and garbos and people that reset and maintain the city, but also in a sense that appreciates that innovation that you're talking about. And I think that's something really tangible that we don't really talk often about, the value of forced experimentation in both governance and design of cities. And little examples like parklets and opening up additional spaces, or turning to the delivery and digital economy prompted by takeaways rather than eating into the restaurant. They're temporary but potentially long-lasting experimentation in the governance of cities.
Yes. I think at the moment there's a whole heap of opportunity for us to look differently in the way that we kind of manage our cities at night, and I think it will be really important to look beyond that kind of core nighttime economy and kind of look more holistically to understand what is happening at night and how we can kind of support the overall city at night to operate in better ways that is better for everyone. So.
Yeah, look, in Victoria at least, we're excited. I think New South Wales has been excited for quite some time as well. We're advocating to get on par and past New South Wales in the usual interstate rivalry, advocating for the Victorian government to have a nighttime economy minister or portfolio, for instance. But again, the message, I guess, from us is you're in a great place. It's a fabulous conversation to have. It has been a deep crisis and a really impactful one, but also a great springboard for innovation. So really leverage that. Be excited about it because it's a great time to think about nighttime economy study and practice and policy, but at the same time recognize that things are changing and changing quite substantially. So hopefully that's been useful as a bit of a teaser introduction from us. We really wanted to push beyond the tropes and really innovate. We're really looking forward to hearing what comes out of the conference and hopefully putting our feet across the Tasman very soon, whether by boat or plane or other means. And in the meantime, we hope you have a good conference, and thanks a lot for listening to us, and see you soon.
Thank you.
See ya.
Hi everyone, my name is Dr. G. I'm from Swinburne University of Technology Sarawak campus, and today I'm here, by invitation from our partner here, all the way in Australia, to present to you, a little bit on Kuching, all right, the creative city of gastronomy, and a little bit insights into Kuching, Sarawak, which is a state in Malaysia, particularly on the night bites here in Sarawak, here in Kuching, Sarawak. So I'm going to bring you into some of the gastronomy excitement in the heart of Borneo. So my name is Jeffrey. All right, I am a senior lecturer here in Swinburne University of Technology Sarawak campus, which is a branch campus from Swinburne University of Technology in Hawthorne, Melbourne. And I have been with this university for the past 11 years now. My main research area is into marketing and destination marketing particularly. I'm currently also the director for a research center here in Swinburne, Sarawak, called Business and Social Innovation Center. So there's a quick briefing, a quick preview about myself. So I also a consultant as well to the state government of Sarawak, and of course to the multiple project. And one of the highlight of the project that I'm currently doing, it's a master plan study in one of the division in Sarawak State, Surian Division, and I handle the tourism section itself as a consultant. And I have been also working very closely with different agencies, ministries in Sarawak over the last couple of years, developing some of the very exciting tourism product research, R&D related to tourism and destination marketing in Sarawak per se. So today I'm going to bring you into a quick preview into what Kuching City of Gastronomy is about. We're going to introduce to you what is actually gastronomy and why it is important towards tourism development, and introducing as well Kuching UNESCO Kuching as which recently we got this status from UNESCO Creative City as a gastronomy city. And I also will share with you, a couple of critical success factors towards night gastronomy, highlighting for an example from Kuching, Sarawak. And I'm going to show you a case study, which is a very interesting night bites tourism destination here in the heart of Borneo in Kuching city itself. And hopefully, if there is any question and answers, perhaps the guest, perhaps the organizer maybe would be able to direct the questions to me. I'm currently in Kuching. I'm unable to fly to Melbourne, fly to Australia per se for this particular talk, and hence I'm doing this recording from my office. So what is gastronomy? If you have heard about gastronomy, it's also known as culinary. All right, it itself is actually an art or form related to the experience of the preparation and the consumption of food and beverage. And this particular term is actually very unique in Sarawak. If you have been to Sarawak, Malaysia, perhaps you will know, in Sarawak we have various ethnicities. One of the largest ethnic indigenous people in Sarawak is actually the Iban indigenous group. All right, and just within the indigenous group itself, the Iban indigenous group, there are different type of foods, the way they produce the food, the way they consume the foods, the way the food is being served to the guests, so on and so forth. So that itself is actually an art itself in the form, hence making gastronomy a unique topic as well in Borneo, and of course in Malaysia as a whole. From a tourism perspective, gastronomy itself, experiences with gastronomy itself often provides tourists or visitors alike the different type of attractions, or sometimes they could even associate it towards a certain type of cultures and the destinations. And highlighting, for example, of the Iban culture, it's really unique in this part of the world, and perhaps you will only be able to find in Borneo, and it's very evident here in Kuching, in Sarawak, because of the diversity that we have in Sarawak itself. Now, of course, when we talk about gastronomy, it is not confined to just experience of the visitors or tourists, but it also involves some form of activities in the preparing and the consumption of food and beverages. So you will see that there's a lot of things within the preparation of the food. Like, for example, one of the very famous the Iban food, the Dayak food in Sarawak is called panso. All right, they don't cook it over a fire stove, but they cook it on the fire, usually outside of the house, traditionally they only prepare it during certain festivities, and they do it together with the family members and with their neighbors in the longhouse itself. All right, so this is often a lot of those preparation of food and beverages in Sarawak, particularly from the indigenous perspective, are very much often related to different festivals. So only during certain festivals, certain food is prepared, and certain food been offered to the guests. Like in Sarawak, because of the indigenous group, they celebrate Gawai Dayak. They don't celebrate the normal New Year. They do celebrate, but that's it's very much westernized here. But in the culture here, they are very much celebrating Gawai. All right, Gawai Dayak, which happened on the actually happened on the 31st of May each year. All right, and it's a festival of harvest. All right, of harvesting. So during those times, they'll prepare food that is related to the festival itself, like panso, so on and so forth, which commonly available usually only during festivals. So in normal time we don't really get it, but nowadays, because of diversity and of course businesses, this kind of a product is also getting more and more popular, especially during different festivals that is also happening outside or away from the usual Gawai festival happening on the 31st of May each year. All right. So for visitors that have came to Sarawak, they have came to Kuching, I think this culinary experience is nothing alien to them. I think a lot of my guests, my friends from different country, from Australia, when they come to Sarawak, when they come to Kuching, they really enjoy, all right, not just the food, but the culture, the experience, the way of preparation, the meaning behind it that associated with the different type of food and beverages offered to them and available here in Sarawak. So what I'm trying to say here is that, when we talk about tourism and gastronomy, it actually forms a very strong symbiotic relationship, all right, particularly for tourists, they come to Sarawak. So, one of the things that we experience in Sarawak, we do have very nice attractions like the beach, the mountain, but a lot of the tourist visitors, they come to Sarawak, a lot of time when they return back to their country, one of the things that they feel, all right, it's really a good experience in their travel is the food itself. It's really the food itself unique. I'm not talking about not just street food, but unique food, very much related and bended towards a certain culture. In this sense, towards the majority, the big group, which is the Dayak group, the Iban group, here in Sarawak, and of course, Dayak, Iban is just one of the various ethnicities available in Sarawak. We also have others ethnicities like, for example, the Bidayu, the Penan, the Orang Ulu. We even have Chinese, from different dialects speaking Chinese. Myself, I'm a Hakka, I'm a Hopo Hakka. There are also Fuchao, so on and so forth. So there are a lot of mix of cultures and diversity in Sarawak that make not just our culture unique, not just our state unique, but the food itself also have a lot of uniqueness, especially when it comes to combining the food, so on and so forth. So Kuching, all right, perhaps some of you have heard about this. Yeah, recently been recognized as UNESCO Creative City of Gastronomy. All right, and in Kuching alone, there are actually a lot of festival. One of the main festival is called Kuching Festival, which is usually held in August each year. Other than 2020 and 2021 because of the pandemic. All right, during the festival itself, we usually will see massive crowds. We're talking about different crowds from different parts of Sarawak, Malaysia, and part of the world coming to Kuching and celebrating the festival. And one of the main attraction in the festival itself is the food. All right, so you find from various type of street foods to traditional foods, at one place, and you get a lot of people to come and try, and sometimes we even have new food, new discovery of different type of tastes, all right, or different type of gastronomy pleasure here happening here in Kuching, right, happening every year. And because of COVID, this have not happened for the last 2 years, but I think there is a blessing as well, because there's a lot of pop-up new street foods concept as well coming up in different locations in Kuching, particularly the night scene itself, which is also very, very interesting in Kuching and in Sarawak as a whole. So, a couple of things that make our gastronomy, and particularly the night gastronomy here in Kuching, very successful. I think a couple of things that I mentioned, things related to in Sarawak, because of, we have a lot of hawker stalls. So the hawker scene itself, it's also one of the things that make it unique and make it very successful. It doesn't happen in restaurant, but it happens on street. So kind of like a street food situation in that sense. A lot of immigrants culture as well, like myself, my grandparents come from China, all right, they immigrate to Borneo before Malaysia was formed, all right, and what happened is that, they bring together the culture from China, from the locations, they marry with the local culture, hence the gastronomy pleasure experience that we have here in Kuching and in Sarawak as a whole. Heritage product is also one of the things very much related towards the culture, that is very much embedded from the immigrants and of course for the indigenous people here in Sarawak. All right. Of course, we're talking about confluence. All right, influence from different cultures. Bringing inspires creativity, especially traditional food, which have become today very successful. Products. Drinks, beverages as well. One of the successful one that I can mention is Ket Lapis Sarawak, which usually will only be offered during festivities, but through some co-creation and blend of culture, Sarawak culture, all right, the different type of art form, way of preparation, the taste itself, and today you are able to find Sarawak Lapis, Ket Sarawak Lapis, not just in Sarawak but outside of Sarawak, in Singapore, so on and so forth. And food festival is where it brings people together in Sarawak. I think that is something that is very beautiful, and especially in night scenes, this is where people come, they meet each other and they enjoy food. And last and not least, international connections. We do have celebrities, like for example the late Jeff Boden, have come to Sarawak twice and have experienced, not just Sarawak hospitality, but the food, Sarawak laksa, and he had mentioned it in his documentary. It's one of the best laksa that he have tried. It's unique. It's so great that he mentioned in his documentary. It is one of the best that he have tried from his trip around the world in terms of laksa and the taste and the pleasure, which marry the culture and of course the people and the food itself. Oh, one of the cases that I'd like to highlight here, Seniawan Old Town. All right, recently, it have been reopened after 2 years COVID lockdown, and this place itself is very rich in night gastronomy. It only open on weekend, only on evening, and during during the opening time, you'll be able to find a diversified type of products from local, international foods to different type of activities also happening together with food and beverage consumptions. So during in this area, you will be able to find on weekends when there are stalls opening up, you'll be able to see that there are also some cultural cultural program like Mandarin folk song karaoke. There are also homestays for the visitors that they come and visit this particular location. So this location also, very much attract a lot of international and domestic clientele. All right, particularly those who are visitors to Sarawak, to Kuching, and we usually will also bring them over to Seniawan Old Town Night Market to experience not just the food but the culture and the people there. All right. At the same time, these business are run by local communities. They are actually run by an association in Seniawan to promote not just the destination but the food that associated with the different culture, with the different ethnicities in these particular locations. And at the same time, if you've seen that, it is still, in a very kind of like an old town, cowboy town kind of a concept. So there's a lot of, things related, in this destination that talks about the promotion of conservations of the immigrants and the descendants, their locations, their food, their history, their cultures, so on and so forth. All right. At the same time, in these locations, they're also talking about a lot of local communities and business empowerment. All right. They are very much into the local food concept street scene. They are also, highlighting on the food festival, which they actually get the idea from Kuching festivals. And they also talk about international connections. There are a lot of international clientele that come here to Seniawan Old Town as well to enjoy the food. And this also have created a lot of good investment opportunity for these particular destinations, particularly for the community, for the family that involved, for the businesses, for the people around here, and of course, it also create good business opportunity for travel agents as a new destination product here in Sarawak, in Kuching. at Senyawan Old Town Night Market. So if you have the opportunity to come to Sarawak, to come to Kuching, I would love to, to introduce to you Senyawan Old Town. Here is where you will be able to find, the diversified kind of a product, not just the destination itself, but the culture, the marriage of the culture, the product, the beverage. You see that kind of confluence that create not just traditional product, traditional food and drinks, beverage, which is unique to Sarawak, but also you'll be able to find unique kind of innovation as well, which come out from this particular destination itself. Okay, so thank you so much. And if you have not been to Sarawak, I would like to welcome you to Sarawak and welcome. And in Sarawak, we have these celebrations, all right, to celebrate our guests. And every time we'll end it with a shout out of Uha, all right. So Uha means fighting, something very similar to the Korean culture. Uha is a celebrations, and I would enjoy if you are in Sarawak. And thank you so much.
Well, hello to you from sunny downtown Bendigo. In fact, we are the geographical centre of Victoria over here on mainland Australia, and it's great to have the opportunity to address you all today. Thank you, Jaime, for the invitation. And over the next few minutes, I hope that I can give you some insights into the key reasons why we wanted to apply to the UNESCO Creative Cities Network in the area of gastronomy. Explain to you some of the key pillars that sat behind our application, and then finish off with what we see as the great strengths and value that we can derive from being part of that particular network. My name is Terry Karamaludis. My substantive role here at the city is Tourism and Major Events Manager, and the gastronomy portfolio typically doesn't sit with my unit. It's actually over in Economic Development. But my colleague Ben Devaney is isolating with the COVID virus at the moment, so we wish him a speedy recovery. And so in Ben's absence, I've taken on the job of speaking to you today about our history with this particular network, why we applied, and some of the many great things that we feel we can derive from the designation. So. Thanks again for letting me join, and I will start by talking about our designation, the history of that, and it was around, in fact, on October the 31st, 2019 that Bendigo joined the 65 cities around the world that have been admitted into the Creative Cities Network, and we were successful in our application for a Creative City of Gastronomy. And that is obviously recognising all of the exciting things happening across our city and region in food and beverage, in culture and sustainability. And our gastronomy region covers Bendigo and 8 other local government areas, and has been recognised for its quality produce, agriculture, creative businesses and strong networks of cooperation. And so collectively that cluster of Bendigo plus 8 other local municipalities. If you throw a blanket over the centre of Victoria, that central heartland as we call it, that is indeed our city and region of gastronomy. So the UNESCO Creative Cities Network, as you would no doubt know, is a network of 246 cities around the world that are putting creativity at the heart of their economic, social, cultural and environmental development plans. And Bendigo's creativity and gastronomy has been recognised on the world stage and opens up really exciting opportunities locally and internationally for us. So our application to join the network was based on 4 key themes or pillars, as we more commonly call them. And these themes and pillars continue to guide our work as a UNESCO Creative City of Gastronomy. And the first of those was to celebrate and elevate, I should say, First Nations culture, creativity and knowledge, The second pillar was to recognise our creativity, cultural diversity and innovation. Thirdly, to improve health and wellbeing, particularly through healthy eating. And lastly, the fourth pillar was to prioritise environmental sustainability, sustainable agriculture and food production as we tackle climate change and now indeed as we recover from the global pandemic, or COVID-19 as it's more commonly known. So the network as we see it, and how does the network, help our city? And so we felt that by becoming a UNESCO Creative City provides us with strategic positioning and opportunities to stimulate local policies and actions towards creativity and strengthen regional and international outreach and impact. Being part of this particular network represents a genuine added value, allowing our city to do a number of things, and I'll outline there's 6 or 8 key items here. And the first of those is that this designation allows us to nurture and strengthen international cooperation between cities that have recognised creativity as a strategic factor for their sustainable development. And we're only a year or two into the designation, and that particular cooperation internationally has been very, very fruitful and productive for us. Secondly, to strengthen its international, regional and international profile and impact by providing visibility for our innovative policies, our strategies and activities towards creativity and sustainable cities. To increase our regional and international attractiveness to economic investors and stakeholders. This is a really important point. Skilled creative professionals or visitors, and facilitate the mobilisation of financial resources from the public and private sector. So no doubt, you'd be on a similar charter, the quest for money, the quest for investors to, advance our goals and objectives is always, a very vital piece of the equation. And so no surprise there that, this designation we felt would give people more reason to find us an attractive city and region to invest in. To network with fellow creative cities through joint events and common projects. We're effectively doing this now, albeit virtually, to stimulate cross-fertilisation, share knowledge and know-how and build partnerships. And we certainly I want to make it really clear to all of the folk watching this presentation that we're up for the collaboration. We're thrilled that you've joined the network, and we see a really productive, fruitful relationship going forward with you as we share knowledge, as we collaborate and find ways to actually drive advantage for our cities and regions in this particular creative network of cities. We also see it as a great momentum, a great opportunity, I should say, to build momentum on creativity by putting the spotlight on the creative sector as a driving force, mobilising stakeholders, including the public and private sectors, and nurturing dialogue between local authorities, professional organisations, academia, and the creative community. So a very, broad range of stakeholders that can be influential and helpful in this particular network and for our city and region. We also saw that it was a great opportunity to propel local creative fields and communities to nurture and encouraging policy and economic development, and further connect creative professionals and local creative businesses to international networks and markets. So, break all that down, the sharing of knowledge, the collaboration, how we partner with people to advance common goals for, a more sustainable, future-minded city was a very, big part of what we thought this network could bring to us. And finally, to connect to the international development agenda through the UNESCO organisation, obtaining opportunities of illustrating our city and experiences and good practices at international level to reinforce our city's image and outreach. So, effectively, we we feel that we go along pretty well. But it's always good to learn and share and collaborate, and learn new ways and better ways of doing things. And we're very convinced that this network, particularly in our area of creativity, which is gastronomy, is going to help steer us and guide us, and provide new motivation and inspiration for us to do greater things for our city and region as part of that designation. We've managed to put together a range of promotional items to drive the awareness of the city and region of gastronomy. And Jaime, what I will do is, I'm not very good at sharing my screen, and so I don't have the skill to do that on this meeting with you, but what we will do is arrange for Tanya Cavallaro, who's our assistant in the unit, to send you across links to the various promotional items that we've developed thus far. Probably the most significant one of those is we've mapped our entire region, and that piece of collateral is now available online, and is a great driver of visitation and regional dispersal. And I understand that tourism is almost a word not to be included in the city and region of gastronomy designation, but at the end of the day, I mean, the byproduct of being in this amazing network is the impact that it has on new visitation. Another key reason, a point of difference for people to visit our city and region. And so it goes without saying that you must have promotional collateral in place to help guide people around your city and region as to where they can find the produce and things that they're looking for, and share with you as part of that designation. And so I'll arrange for that to be sent to you, Jaime, and please feel free to share that with the group. Obviously, we've got digital collateral websites. We do a lot of above the line marketing, and showcase the city and region through events and festivals. And we've just come off a Winegrass Festival on the weekend just past that was very successful. We have a range of food and wine events throughout the year that are dotted around our city and region, and we're leading up to our iconic Bendigo Easter Festival that's celebrating 150 years continuous delivery of festivals this Easter. And city and region of gastronomy produce will be featured significantly at that festival. So we feel that we have a really strong presence of promotional opportunities for our artisans, growers, producers and makers in this particular area of creativity. And one of the things that we're working on now for probably the last 12 months is a new and major annual event that will run across 7 days that will be purely dedicated to city and region of gastronomy. It's quite a big piece. We're probably halfway there putting it all together, and happy to share any of our learnings and intelligence and thoughts around that for you, Jaime, for sharing with the rest of your group as a learning, as part of our commitment to collaborate and share knowledge with you, and see that we can both progress and get the most out of this designation for both our cities and regions. So that's about all I have for you on this occasion. Sorry that we weren't able to join you in person, but we've got a number of staff away from work, isolating with the COVID virus, and resources are pretty scarce at the moment. So we did take the opportunity to make a virtual presentation, and I'll also encourage the group, if you've got any points for clarity or anything that you feel that you would like to know more about out of what I've discussed or presented to you today, I'll share Jaime's email address, mobile number, office number. Please don't hesitate to come to me or to Ben Devaney, in fact the manager of the unit responsible for gastronomy, or indeed Jackie Murphy. We're all here in the one building when we're available and not isolating because of the COVID virus. And again, congratulations. We were thrilled to provide some support for your application, and really excited that we now have 2 regional centres in Australia that are part of this exciting network of creative cities in the UNESCO arena. So well done again. Enjoy the rest of your day, and as I say, please come back to myself or Ben or Jackie for anything that we might be able to provide extra clarity on for what we're talking about today. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day.
I knew that my colleague Sarah didn't like coriander, so I thought I'd set her up with that. You're on the same table too, so you can be friends together. So before I jump into some local numbers and some data, I just want to share with you two stories about food and personal stories really. So at the age of 16, we went on a trip to Cape York. I grew up in Cairns in far north Queensland, and we came across a little town called Cowan. And Cowan's a tiny little town, a lot of Indigenous community in Cowan. And we just stopped at the front of this hotel, and a lady came up to talk to us, and somehow we got talking. My parents were teachers, and she said, "Oh yeah, it's funny, the attendance of kids coming to school was so low, below 50%, but we've got a new principal came in, and now the attendance is above 90%. And she said the reason behind that was the fact that the kids were given fresh strawberries when they came to school by this new principal. So the power of simple strategies to change things locally, and fresh strawberries was such a treat. The second one was I've actually worked in the nighttime economy for 8 years. I'm only 29 years old, but I actually started in a pizza shop in Cairns at the age of 14, worked there until I was 20, and actually convinced my teaching parents that it would be a good idea at 16 to sink 30 grand into it and buy it for the family. So at the age of 16, I became a director in our pizza shop. Hanno and Sons was the company name, and I worked there with my three brothers, and over the time of 2 years running that for 6 nights a week, I had 14 people work with me. So it was quite an experience, and I think Dad, he got red wine and pizza out of it and not much else. So I don't think he made any money. So that's our story of food.
Sounds great.
It was pretty great. We ate pizza 4 nights a week, so I thought that was pretty good. So last year, my colleague and I gave a presentation to council called The State of the City. And that's available online. You can actually access that, and it's got a lot of local data related to Lonnie. So I just want to run you through Lonnie at a macro level. So $5.9 billion GRP output, over 40,000 jobs, 553,000 annual visitors. March 2020 I put in there pre-COVID. So we'll see what happens after all of this COVID goes away, if it ever does. So then we've got economic drivers. Manufacturing, health, as we know, is a major part of the economy. Construction, financial services, education and retail. We're a population of 68,800 people, and we're a very vibrant city. So I've only been here 12 months, but I know and I've seen just the vibrancy here. You've got AFL matches, and last year we were lucky enough to have extra matches. One included my Brisbane Lions team, who probably played the worst game of the year that they played last year. We have BBL, Monofoma, Festivali, food and wine, some of the best wine that I've ever tasted. So, going to Clover Hill and being able to see that if you drilled a hole through the middle of the earth, you'd end up in Champagne. I mean, pretty exceptional. Harvest farmers markets. What a wonderful community market that is. Arts and culture, natural sites. So if we dig a little deeper into Lonnie and what makes up the business community, we are overwhelmingly a small business community. And I think you'll notice that across Tasmania. It is those mums and dads who are creating employment opportunities for locals. It may be a 17-year-old who's running a pizza shop who's creating 14 employment opportunities across the city. But 96.8% are small businesses, from sole traders to 19 employees. Only 171 employ over 20 people, and only 9 employ over 200 in the city of Launceston. So that's the small business community, such a big part of our city. Now let's look at a few key things around the city and paint a bit of a picture. So every year our team at the City of Launceston, the Strategy, Economic Development and Analytics team, we conduct a shop survey of the CBD, and it's expanded slightly over the last year, but in our last survey, 93% of Launceston's ground floor CBD shops were occupied. So there's a lot of talk about the empty shops in Lonnie. 93%, it offers opportunity for businesses, new businesses to come in. So it's not actually a critical mass of empty shops that you do tend to hear through the grapevine. But I just like to think it's one of those great stories that passes down through families that Lonnie's got all these empty shops. Unemployment is at 7% at the last reported period, which is actually higher than Hobart in Australia, 5.4% Hobart in Australia, 5.6%. And we're actually seeing that come down and down again. So I think the latest figures from some of the last reported stats is unemployment's in the 4s now. Online job adverts have surged over the pandemic, a 346% increase over the 12-month period. One of the most alarming stats, and this goes back to my story about the strawberries, is education. So only 39.1% of people aged over 15 have actually completed year 12. That's 12.8% less than the Australian average. So if we're talking about economic development in terms of Tassie, just educating those kids would have a massive impact to our economy. Housing, as we know, is out of control at the moment. The house prices seem to go up by the week, and the rental vacancy is extremely low. Unfortunately, my time in Tassie is actually coming to an end in 2 weeks, and I'm actually moving to the Pilbara in Western Australia. And the housing was a significant impact on my decision making because of the price of housing and how much money I would have to borrow. Full-time jobs. So we got 1,780 full-time equivalent jobs in food and beverage services in Lonnie. That's 5.5% of our jobs. Australia is only 4.2%. So clearly we are a big food hub here in Lonnie. But I want to talk now about the total jobs and the difference between the full-time equivalent jobs. So 2,824 people are actually employed in Lonnie in food and bev. So in compared to the full-time equivalent jobs, that's a difference of 1,044. So does that mean there's underemployment? Or does it mean that it's just the nature of the industry? And so when I reflect back on my experience working at pizza shops, I also worked at a pizza shop in Brisbane when going through university, and it suited my lifestyle having that casual employment. So I'd suspect there's a lot of people who it just fits that time of their life working in the food industry, but there also could be this underemployment that's occurring. And by having a stronger nighttime economy, is there an opportunity then for those people to have more quality employment, filling up the hours that they need to actually pay for the housing, pay for the food, the rising cost of living that we're all seeing? And thank goodness fuel prices have gone down below $2 for my 5,000 kilometre drive to the Pilbara, because that would be an expensive drive at $2.40 a litre. So now with our shop survey, we're getting to a point where we can collect a lot more data in a rich fashion. So our team, we have some phenomenal GIS members in our team who have transformed. So my predecessor, Bruce, he went out and did the shop survey on a clipboard and had a red pen, whereas now we can actually go out with an app. It's such an amazing leap in technology. But 93%, as I said, but now we can actually start to classify those businesses and see what industries they're operating in. So 71 cafes and restaurants, that was 11% of our ground floor shops. 27 takeaway food services, 4.4%, and 16 pubs and taverns. So that's almost 1 in 5 shops in central Lonnie in the food industry. It's pretty phenomenal. I mean, I had a look quickly, I was doing some Googling when Jaime Vollen told me that I had to do a presentation last week, and I couldn't really say no because he actually lives around the corner now, and he might come around to my house later at night and throw stones at my window if I said no. But Melbourne was 1 in 8, so that's a fairly big difference. Melbourne, the home of food and entertainment and all those sorts of things, Lonnie has got it. finish by talking to our recent project that we submitted a grant for, that Jaime had a big part to play, City Heart Stage 2, designing what that looks like in Lonnie. And some of you may have seen the plans. But really, what it was all about is how can we transform our central city to capitalise and be able to maybe increase this nighttime economy. And there was a line that was in the grant application that said the challenge faced by Launceston is that there was a limited nighttime economy prior to 2020. In the ranking of nighttime economies across Australia, Launceston ranked 80th. 80th. That seems pretty low, despite being the second largest city in Tasmania. So rather than challenge, I prefer opportunity, and I think that's where we're getting to today is there an opportunity to create a lot more local employment opportunities for people to fill in those hours that they need to be able to pay for their housing, to pay for the rising cost of living. And at the end of the day, that's what economic development is about. It's about providing quality opportunities for people. So that's where I'll finish, Jaime. Thank you for having me and thank you for inviting me.
Great. Was yours. At the same time, UNESCO realised the importance of evening economies to forward-looking cities, and once again, your efforts were recognised. Congratulations, loud, stormy applause. Activity 1. What's the evening economy vision for your city? In your groups, develop the vision of your remarkable evening economy. Remarkable being worthy of remark. How does it go? What do people do? Locals, visitors, business workers, how do they feel experiencing it? How is it sustainable environmentally, economically, socially and culturally, or in all ways, in other words? You will have 15 minutes to do this. A good game is a fast game. On your table you have papers, pens, sticky notes, etc. Develop the vision any way you want. At the end of the 15 minutes you'll move around and have a look at the work of the other groups. Now we may sneak a few more than 15 minutes. Reflect on what you heard this morning, or earlier this afternoon. Beg your pardon? Someone's about taking a broader system view, about looking at innovations, about looking at opportunities, which then Paul again reinforced for us. You got some advice from Professor G about critical success factors. A really vibrant hawker scene, immigrant culture, heritage products and produce, confluence, bringing people together to inspire creativity, festivals and events, national and international connections, which was reiterated by Terry. He talked about the old town, the diversity of food and entertainment, visitor attractions, confluence of innovation, employment, promoting conservation and valuing our cultures, immigrants and locals, food, culture, preparation, and the meaning associated with it. These are all things we know. What these guys did earlier was wrap it all up in a bow to say to us, these are the kinds of things that you need to consider. And we have this wealth of coming from various different areas. The Bendigoians talked about strengthening and promoting strategic local and regional strengths. And it was a bit bureaucratic on the one hand, but so powerful on the other, because it's true. What are other strengths? Talked about the influence of local policies and reforming them. How do we reform? Talked about international and national outreach, about facilitating and attracting investment, building networks to share knowledge, collaborate, find the new ways to do things, new ways and ways, and also being part of the tribe of future-minded cities. It's a very powerful position. And then, of course, Paul reminded us, opportunities, opportunities, opportunities. And then we get to what's the evening economy vision for your city? 15 minutes, see how you go. You've got a box of tricks there that may help.
Stickies, we've got paper.
It can be sort of put into that we've got the seaport, we've got Charles Street, we've got the town. So any activity that we have is sort of separated, and therefore we haven't got that critical mass in one place. We're not saying you have to have that, but maybe something that makes sure that those existing places are consolidated and well connected. And then we thought about the issue about traffic safety and things that basically to be able to walk around for able-bodied is the thing that's wrong with maybe the seaport being a centre is that it's hard to get there in the dark at night time without being maybe run over or those sorts of things. So yeah, basically with those sorts of ideas in mind about connections and making the different places that we have work and work well together. We started with Launceston's nighttime economy is a web of interconnected precincts that provides a variety of experiences in a safe environment linked by our unique gastronomic assets that locals love and visitors can't wait to enjoy.
We would have done lists for locals, visitors, businesses, workers, but I think we started with locals and there's a lot that transfers and supports those others as well. And we started off thinking about it being a family-friendly space so that this is a city that families can get out into and have fun, which means there will need to be activities for kids that are creative, engaging, fun, active. The shops will need to stay open a bit later as people are moving around between different venues and events. Free public transport will support people to come into the city and safely consume a few glasses of local wine or gin or something else.
Get a free bus home.
And get a free bus home.
that's called something. The booze bus.
And less space for cars.
Less space for cars, including, you know, can you activate events in car parks, which actually then removes the ability for people to park. I mean, on this list there are numerous ideas around activities that you can do, but also the infrastructure that's needed to support those activities, so covered spaces to make them all weather purpose but still be outdoors, be flexible in the use and planning of spaces like markets so that they can work both as an economic space and a creative space. And then the types of experiences and opportunities between locals, growers, makers, producers. So how do we share stories between people? How do you have a farmer work with a potter to create, you know, plates and bowls for the food to be shown in? How can you bring school kids into the economy? How do they get to have opportunities to sell their wares at markets that then they bring their families into and share that pride in? Seeing what else. We talked about art installations that incorporate buildings, where the building becomes the canvas for the art, and also with things that we're already used to having, like the open house events. How do you layer that with gastronomy so that you go into a home but there's a food experience in there as well? And we think then this will, you know, it's obviously going to have economic impacts, social, cultural, and environmental impacts. Kim, what have I missed?
We also talked on to taking all of the cars off the road, making the footpaths a bit wider so we get more people dining in the street, creating that vibrancy, having you know, heaters to be able to keep everybody warm, and adding to that sense of joie de vivre of the evening.
That's it.
Another 5,000 people hanging around, if you like, the city of Launceston. So amazingly, businesses are going to stay open beyond 8:30 at night by those few half-dozen restaurants. They're going to stay open until midnight, which is fantastic. And there's also going to be increased job opportunities because we're going to have all these people around town. But what else is going to make a place more vibrant? Well, the QV Mag is going to open after 5 p.m. And lots of our exhibition spaces are going to open beyond 5 p.m. And having spoken to the new GM of the QV Mag, I know he's going to do that, so that's a given.
We'll be able to wander around with a glass of wine.
That's right.
Gosh,
Exactly.
Yeah, excellent.
Exactly.
And I'm very, very keen on this concept of the booze bus. Because the idea of people being able to go out and have dinner and getting a free bus home. Totally agree with the, by the way, making footpaths wider, but boy, will we be hit something about that if we do it. So having gastronomic events early in the evening so that the family can come along, and then the oldies can go off and do something else. Certainly street art, so all of our beautiful buildings are being both illuminated as well as being artscapes. So Jen Brown, I would say, mentioned about Jen Brown, used to do these things where you see an entire building collapsing, but it's all just done digitally. And so they're going to be doing that during Beaufort, by the way.
Rotating one on the hour every hour.
Rotating on the hour.
Oh, yeah.
Constantly activated. Permanent. We've got permanent busking spots at key locations around the periphery, as well as in the middle of town. They're heated and they're covered. So the poor old buskers aren't freezing to death. Utah Stadium has got its extension. The federal election made a promise of the 100 million, and we got our extension. So we've got 4 indoor basketball courts, and so there's BBL going on in the main stadium, and we've got basketball going on in the basketball courts. And the most important thing is that they've actually, Tas City Builders have completed their conversion of all of the top floors of the top floors of many buildings, and we've now got 500 extra apartments in the middle of the city, so we've got all these people.
But unfortunately, they're covered in their signage.
Sorry?
But unfortunately, they're covered in their signage.
Oh, yeah.
They're all tested.
And lastly, but not least, the suggestion of a restaurant day, which is where basically families cook their own food and they're allowed to bring it in and sell it. And so also, of course, all the different migrant communities that we have. We've got, I think it's 46 different nationalities out in Newman, and they're all moving in as well. So they're close to the city. And I think that's it. There's lots and lots of other stuff there. And we talked about having Dubai has an ice skating rink, so why can't we have one?
It's haven't got enough oil.
Hobart tried.
We've got green hydrogen. We've got green hydrogen.
Oh, it's cold enough to freeze.
Okay, loud stormy applause. Hey, hang on.
All streets.
Some streets. Excellent. Next.
Free bus or shuttles moving people around the city because there's going to be so much going on. We've got electric buses. Have you got electric buses? And plan for at least one major activity or event to be in the city every night of the week, so that you've actually got something attractive. So, for example, it could be the light installations that could be running every night, but some event, and one of those events will be in Civic Square, Princess Square, City Park, Utah Stadium, Inverask, Riverbend Park, or the river itself. Floating candles down Tamar Lake.
Okay.
Okay,
great idea. Yeah, but great idea. Yeah, great idea.
And just simply make sure there's a choice of multiple food outlets, cheap through to far end, open every night till late.
Loud stormy applause. Come on, that's great. Top 4 here. Remember, snap. We'll listen for the snaps.
Okay, ours are all over the place, but number 1, we've got basically businesses be willing to open later at night. There's a lot of cold background stuff behind that, but generally encourage strongly.
That was a snap.
Yeah, that's a snap.
Oh, was it? Oh, sorry.
We snap.
Oh, snap. Yeah, you have snap.
Okay.
It's great.
Yeah, sorry. Get people living in the city. There's more inner city living arriving.
Snap. Right.
Prioritising saying yes as council decision makers. Young people have opportunities, ideas for businesses, events. Basically be less risk averse as authorities.
Someone have a snap.
We talked about it, but we
That's good. I'll take that as a snap.
That's just a slow closure.
And sort of in that line, that cafes and food businesses should just have automatic right to use the parking space if they have it in front of their shop as dining or business use area or something like that.
Okay. Loud stormy applause for this one. All right, you got go do them and we can all snap with you again, okay?
Well, I'll do the ones that we haven't snapped on with the others. So we had 10 multi-storey car parks into family-friendly affordable housing and makers areas. Actually, that was one we snapped on. Someone had more in city accommodation.
Yeah. That was previous.
Like more investment in street public art as to turn them into iconic locators in the city. More lighting in the city.
Snap.
Snap.
Yeah. Okay. I think everything else we've snapped on.
One of the things we did talk about were the little parklets. Rather than having to do it in one big chunk, just closing the street down, do the parklets and then just have the parklets sort of take over. So look at that distribution that we put up about all of the restaurants and cafes around. Maybe focus on putting parklets out in front of there because you know tables come out and then the parklets are like triffids. They just keep.
Could I do it by degree? Just sneak him in.
Yeah, that's right.
I've done an observation about Launceston. You suggested closing some streets. I think one of the things about Launceston is all of the streets are main roads. There are hardly any laneways. There aren't a lot of roads that you could just close off and kind of have like De Graves Lane or just a little back alley that's kind of got cafes going out onto it. There's not a lot of places where you could do that, and it would probably be a really long-term goal. Yeah. But if the city occasionally bought a weird building in the middle of a block and knocked it down and created a through route, you might
actually got you've actually from there.
You could create some lane, like Kingsway is about the only one, and I would at least.
So Sam Reid has bought a substantive piece of real estate, so founder Willie Smith, or co-founder Willie Smith, that faces City Park, Princess Square, and also St. John Street. And what you don't realise is that there's a stack of laneways in behind him, and so he's putting a microbrewery, family-friendly restaurant, and various other things, and he's trying to get people to come on board with him because he also owns a bucket load of sheds. And I say sheds, these are probably dating back to the late 1800s, which are quite lovely, and so he wants them to he wants those activators to turn the Princess Square area into an actual precinct, an eating, family-friendly precinct, and there's lots of laneways, so
there's a whole bunch, like, the city does have kind of where Sweeper is doing Tatler's Lane, that it's a private right-of-way, and like you can walk through it, but the city should have a policy and a budget of buying some and adopting them as public thoroughfares permanently. And then at some point in the future, someone will build something facing it, and you magically get an active frontage.
You don't even have to buy it. You can have a planning concession where you get it as part of the deal.
Section 71 or something. Yeah. Buying it and adopting it would be the gold standard, but it might be cheaper way.
But you're not going to get the money, are you? So
but
that's the one I'm looking at.
Because all the roads are main roads.
Yeah, I think what we did have a few years ago, one of my colleagues from the university who is a fanatical on what he calls active transport. In other words, foot and pedal power, non-electric pedal power. He managed to convince the city of Launceston to close, I think it was Charles Street, for a morning, and basically had all the traffic. The city coped with it, and everybody had a really lovely time. So, you know, you can do these things, and yes, there would be. I was just thinking about air parklets. Every time I think air parklet, I see the abuse that Rufus Black received when he talked about a parklet and all that. And I mean, it was abuse, torrential abuse. But I love the idea of parklets. So, I mean, we can close off streets, and people, you know, if they see a value in it, you know, we're going to have a street fiesta, you know, every month on a Sunday night, or a Saturday night. Wouldn't, you know, got to go to work on Monday. So that's kind of it.
I think also with the stuff that every street is a main street, maybe we need to look at the hierarchy of our roads and actually say, are there ones that can be a bit more like the avenue past into the street, that we can, they still have have that kind of size to them, but then when you go, that space is now all pedestrians, or it's just a little bit of space for bicycles to go through kind of thing. That maybe we should just look at trying to funnel traffic into certain roads instead.
Yeah, that was a key recommendation of the girl report back in about 2009 or whatever, that when they were here, was that, yeah, that were an observation that we don't have that much difference in the priority of roads. Like, there is less traffic on Cameron and St John, but they are the same. There's parking on both sides, it's the same number of lanes, they're the same width, that you can drive the same way, and the same sort of level of priority is given to cars in just about all of the streets except the avenue, basically. And so then part of that was make more like the avenue, and some with no traffic, and absolutely close them down whenever you want to for an event. And
what about the Esplanade? The Esplanade along the side. I remember many years ago, it's my story, my youngest daughter, who is a social warrior, we were sitting down in Hobart, and she was saying, Launceston is boring as all hell. She was about 13, 14 years of age. And she said, I know how to reinvigorate the city. And she sat down with a pile of napkins, and I thought, I'm just so sorry I never kept them. But she said that the Esplanade that runs alongside the levee wall there, those beautiful heritage listed buildings.
Yeah.
Why don't we have a massive market there on a Sunday morning? I know it's talk about evening culture, but it's just, there really is very little traffic along there for the most part. And now that we've cut off that exit point out onto the main road, why wouldn't you? And you just have this stunning area, beautiful backdrop of those buildings. It's great. So
you need to build it.
We're talking about this.
I think the levee is interesting, and more could maybe be made of it.
Yeah.
Especially the bit that faces north.
Yep.
Because all of the ground floor businesses on either side of the river don't have river views.
No.
But once you go 2 stories up,
It's massive.
it's beautiful. And why wouldn't you want that? So
yeah, and it's wasted land here, Tony. Not very connected to the city.
That's a really big one. Nobody's mentioned, I think. Rooftop bars. Is there one anywhere in? There's about one that actually has a view over the city.
I think the City of Launceston, with the proposed extension of QV Mag, will not only be a rooftop bar, but it'll certainly be a top floor restaurant that looks looks down the guts of the gorge, which will be fantastic. That's my understanding.
Cinco is very nice because of the bend in Brisbane Street. If you're in Cinco, sitting on the right spot, you can look right down Brisbane Street.
We want a night home. It's fun. Why would we bother? It's fun. It's fun.
I'll say that I think a night economy is really good for creating that sense of place. I'm originally from Brisbane, and some of my fondest memories are nighttime activities, and most of them, along the Brisbane River do involve food and drink. And I think that's something that Launceston can benefit from. I mean, we already do. We've seen the stats that Paul gave us on our food and drink industry. So we're getting there. We just need to do it at night time as well as during the day. So yeah, I think a night economy is really beneficial for sense of place.
We're going in order, or just...
No, popcorn.
Well, nighttime economy, you can see what happened to Sydney when they stopped drinking in the evenings. I mean, no one wanted to go anymore. And that was one punch rule that brought that in. But the decline in the economy of Sydney was significant, and the desire of people that weren't just international tourists was significant. And it took away from the city, a really attractive part of the city that the locals valued quite highly. And it added significantly to their quality of life. So nighttime economy adds to your quality of life. You can go home to the suburbs at the end and be quiet, but you get the chance to come out and be rowdy once in a while and enjoy yourself and have a celebration, and then go home and think that was great, providing you didn't overdo it.
I'm interested in the comment that was made earlier, that person over there on their phone. around the fact that you don't do it for visitors, but you do it for locals. Do you think there is a feeling amongst the community here that a nighttime economy would be welcomed and supported? Kim, go.
I wanted to. Yeah, you knew what I was going to do. Disrupt on this one. Firstly, retain and attract youth. It will do that because we have 26-year-old kids, and they need something to do at night, and St. John's and things like that provide that, but it certainly helps with that segment of the demographic. However, we are an agrarian community. We have been since Launceston was founded, and we have a tendency to dine early and go to bed early. So is this what the locals want? Will they support this? Or will it just be a more youth-generated system?
People always become Quakers. It's also safety. It's safety.
Yeah.
And if people are out at night, but there's not enough people out at night, and the world that we live in requires that concept of safety and safety in numbers. So you can walk down a small laneway and feel safe because there will be other people in that laneway with you. By the way, some of us have children that are 42 years of age. So that idea vibrancy creates safety, but it also creates that idea of place, because it really is. You know, when we talked about the UNESCO city of creative city of gastronomy, it is not something that attracts tourists. It just creates a sort of an identity to the rest of the world. Yes, it may attract some people in a COVID endemic world. I'll never use the word post-COVID because we'll never be post-COVID. But so it really is for people, but it's also creates safety at night. But it's still fun.
It creates a perception of safety, which is more important than actual safety.
People will come out because they will feel safer.
Just following up too, with a question. The university being in the centre of our city, which I think is one of the most wonderful things that will ever happen. Just such a milestone event.
Can we have, you're recording that?
What do you think students need from a nighttime economy?
They need choice of food. Definitely choice of food. They need choice of venue.
They need a uni bar.
No, we're not building a uni bar because that would keep them all in one place.
Private sector to think about.
I think I feel a boo coming on here.
Incidentally, that was the first thing that everybody said. Where is the uni bar? And I said, for crying out loud, there's 5 pubs within 5 minutes walk.
Paul and I are from Queensland, and we understand the importance of a uni bar.
I went to Dublin University in the 1970s.
Oh my God.
I know uni bar. So it's choice of food, a choice of quality food but cheap, and also choice of actual. When I say choice of food, 3 of my 4 daughters are vegetarians. One is probably vegan, or just bordering on vegan. I think she has the odd boiled egg and glass of milk. But really, so we just, from the point of view of young people, but noting that the university's demographic is not 18 to 26-year-olds. The average age of our students is 26 and beyond. So we're talking about mature age, predominantly females, partners, or not partners but have children, and partly work. Sorry, that's just giving you a quick demographic snapshot. So we really need to be, it's not just young people that we be catering to.
So it's that family side of things that then comes into it.
The university question's interesting. I moved away from home for university, and I dare say a lot of people in Tasmania would be moving away from their homes. And one of the biggest challenges I faced was in somewhere where you don't know many people, where you go out by yourself. The way that restaurants and bars are set up as if that you're going to be dining with someone or with multiple people. And even that sense of security to be able to walk into a place where you can sit in a bar where it's just a single seat. And it seems quite trivial to think about how you're going to set up your seats in, when you're talking about bars and things like that. But I think university students provide a very interesting way of how we look at food and bars being opening late at night. And even classes all go different. Even if you have a group of friends you're going to meet, some people won't finish till 6, some till 9. So that kind of, when you walk into a place, you want to feel welcome and safe from, people judge. If you walk into places now and sit at a table for 2 by yourself because that girl's date didn't show up. Arguably sometimes that is the case, but also
and being able to feed that person who's there at 6, the person who's there at 7, and the person who's there at 9.
Just going back to the gastronomy comment in relation to the fact that it builds a reputation but is not necessarily a visitor attractor. I'm interested to hear what the brand Tasmania people thought of that.
Well, I think it has to be for the people that live here first. We can't look outside the city and try and provide benefits for people who might not ever come. But then understanding that future residents, future investors, parents who decide to send their kids to school here, their first taste might be a trip to Launceston, and so seeing that lifestyle piece is really important.
Yep.
And maybe gastronomy has a bad brand as well as the word brand. But it's because it's more than just fine dining in restaurants. It's about food systems, it's about culture, it's about people. And I think the opportunity that Launceston has now is to really activate this accolade in lots of different ways, and invite as many people as possible to be part of this experience.
Spot on. And it's that soil the stomach. It's a full food system, so it's not just restaurant. It's soil the stomach. I had an alderman that we were presented to that said bullet to belly, but anyway, I don't think your vegan daughter would appreciate that one. But we talk about the soil the stomach, so it's across that whole food system. And I think that's one of the messages that we do have to get out there, what gastronomy really means. And to me, and it's also building the pride, because for so long I think people shrugged off this sort of agrarian element of our economy. And actually we've got to embrace it, because from our earliest Indigenous inhabitants here through to the early colonies, we fed Sydney Cove and kept them alive. There's reasons that there are mills dotted across the landscape because we were the breadbasket for the nation. So, let's build that pride in the fact that we have kept Australia alive from the very early days, and it's something that we should be very proud of, because we're continue to feed the world.
And it's going to be the agricultural sector. I've got to get my numbers right here. The target for what we're calling the Tasmanian Agricultural Precinct for agriculture in the state is to be worth $50 billion by 2025.
No. 2020.
We're already about 35 billion or something like that. And so we're already at the right. I know that we're close to the number, so we should get there.
Depends how much opium is
And we'll get the Iranians are now growing opium again.
So I think with the focusing on locals is the fact that tourists and people now, they can spot fake very easily. And so, I think back to, I've lived in the Whitsundays and Brisbane and Cairns, and the difference with Brisbane hospitality to a place like the Whitsundays is Brisbane's really built around the local, and you can see it in the service that you get in a tourist town compared to a town that's built around locals. And it's the way you get served, because they rely on repeat customers. And that really comes through people. And look, the Whitsundays, it's stunning, and it really is, but it's a different experience. You go there for the natural beauty, but then the experience around that is really a lot lower. So I think a place like Lonnie has that opportunity to, with such a good food system, with such good produce, focusing on the local, making it really good for the local, tourists will just naturally love it. So,
yeah, I think that it extends that pride idea. If you're proud of your local food, You've got every relative that comes to visit you, everyone from mainland that comes to visit you, every business person that comes to visit you. You're going to say, come out to this place, it's great. And you're going to be proud to take them there. You can't fake that.
And one of the reasons we went on this, the journey for the UNESCO Creative Cities is because of my experience when we set up Stillwater Restaurant. You wouldn't believe the number of people who actually came and thanked us for setting up Stillwater, because it was the reason they said, if this town can support a restaurant of this quality, we're happy to move here. Okay, so it's quite amazing how that one little thing, that one good experience, will turn somebody's intention into an action.
Santosh, with the work that you do and the Multicultural Council does, what benefit would a thriving evening economy bring to the people that you help?
Yeah, thank you. Before that, I want to highlight on the why people should go outside, or what could be the driver of getting people out of their home and go for the night market. I have heard a lot about focusing on the local food, but I think we should focus on the food that local people produce. Like Tasmania is getting more migrant communities. That means in the last 5 years, I think migrants population has been increased significantly. Means the local population is increased. Not only the Australian people are migrated from the other states to Tasmania. It's because migrant people are coming here, and the total population is increasing. Means we should focus on the foods that local people prefers. Like I have gone through the various restaurants, various food stalls here. You can see the night market happening after this time. Even there, you find only few choices. Like you don't have many choices. There are, for example, I'm from Nepal, and I can't find any Nepali food in the neither night market, nor in the harvest market, nor in the Gold Street. So there are three markets are running here. So government or the local government or our projects should focus on those local people that prefer their food. Not only Nepalese food, we can't find the Burmese food. Burmese population are increasing here. Only I can find the local food beyond the Tasmanian is in the international food that is popular is the Afghani food. So I think we should focus on that and because of that, that has multiple benefits, as Paul mentioned that Tasmania or the Launceston is very poor in gastronomy and the night market. If we can bring the people outside of their home and to make most of the people are coming to the local food markets or the night markets, then that will create more opportunity. More people coming outside of home means that will create more opportunity and that we deserve. We Tasmanian or Launceston people don't deserve to be one of the less prosperous cities in the Launceston. We deserve to have a better life. We deserve to have a better economy because Launceston has received lots of talented, interested and local professors, local economists, local planners. So we deserve, Launceston deserve a better economy.
Could I?
Actually, I was just going to say before, in bringing in our brand Tasmania Sisters, I've opened it up for you to ask questions now. So yes, on cue.
I just wanted to say that might be a hook for the council, the city, to try and leverage some of that sweet federal money, because without being unkind to Launceston, probably one of the reasons there are so many migrants is that it's regional for the purposes of getting a visa.
Yes.
So recognising that that's a national policy and Tasmania is benefiting from that, the council should, the city or the state should really have a more focused way to take advantage of the people who would otherwise move to Sydney and Melbourne. and probably start really excellent and profitable restaurants and other businesses. And it's silly to waste this massive resource that a federal policy has given us.
Santosh, could you?
Yeah, that is what I'm trying to focus on. Tasmania is inviting more migrant people, but they are again temporary. So yeah, I have seen some of my colleagues.
Exactly, and then as soon as you've done the 2 years, people move back to the mainland.
Yeah, it's both way. If they find better way of living here, because this is a small city, very convenient. If you go everywhere, you can find every place within 15 minutes. So it's a time saving. Have good schools, good college. But if we could make some of the policy changes, that might go beyond the gastronomy. But if we could make some strategy to retain them, then they are likely to stay here. Because I have seen some of my friends who have potential to get a better job in other states, but they are living here because they have more family time. So they are living here, and some who have moved to the other places is mainly because of 2 reasons. One is employment, like they have multiple skills, but the Tasmania or the Launceston economy could not leverage their skills. Like they are engineers, they have done the planning degree, but they are working on the Woolworth on the counter. So they are going to the farms and picking the berries. So it is the loss to the local economy. And another is beyond the gastronomy, that is the culture. Like the local community is not accepting some of those people. Like for example, some Hindu following people don't find any their temple, which is the temple in Launceston, not in Hobart. So they are moving because they don't have temple and they don't have priest to help them in the rituals. So yeah, if we can consider of those 2 areas in next planning, then yeah, there is no way we can't be a prosperous city in Australia.
Yeah, it is interesting that we talked about. So there was no mosque in Launceston until about 6 weeks ago.
Yeah.
But the university had a prayer room out at Newnham, which has been operating for, I don't know, probably 12, 15 years, and was highly used. I mean, we usually had about 500 people through it every week, and particularly, of course, during Ramadan and also on Fridays. As we move to Inveresk, we're in conversations with the city of Launceston to have some form of, whether it be a prayer room or a multi-faith place, which can be used by people of different faiths. But we always go back to the fact that there are bucket loads of Catholic churches around. Fewer Anglican ones as they're being sold off, which is fine, as well as other. But the concept of Hindu temple for Hindu worship is something that needs to be considered, because these are to me, and I'm a scientist, I'm not a town planner, but the idea of having those facilitators, that infrastructure to retain people. But I'm an Irishman, so I love telling stories. So much to my wife's embarrassment, I love having random conversations with people. So if I'm walking along the levee wall, I see somebody and I'll just start talking to them. And there's somebody standing on the bridge, the pedestrian bridge, and I said, "What do you think?" And I said, it was a guy who was actually from India. And he said, I love the bridge. He said, I just love Launceston. He said, they're the most friendly people in the world. He said, I'm going to stay here for the rest of my life. And I appreciate the fact that there is the exit for people after 2 years. But it is interesting that, you pick one bunch of people who say that this is the friendliest place on earth. But we do know, and we saw at the very, very beginning of the COVID shut down, those 2 poor Chinese students being abused. That person was stoned off their skull on meth, I think. But the idea, so we've got but that idea of retaining that, places of worship, places that are of significance to our 46 different ethnic communities that now live in Launceston that are very important.
And giving opportunities for new migrants to create their future as well. That's one of the things that that's happened at Harvest a lot, is we've had a lot of new migrants having a hard time integrating, so wanting to share their food with the community. And through doing that, actually embedding themselves well within the community.
Yeah, that is what we want. Like, you know, we are asking for people to come around and you know, I can make food and I can't sell. I need some place, or you know, multicultural people need some place, and that need to be promoted by the local government, and not like, you know, you cook and go and sell. So that doesn't make sense. If we could provide them a forum, like, you know, we could provide them a space. We could give them a space, then definitely they will do. I see in some of the events, activities in the Harmony Day, MRC used to provide a stall, and multicultural communities used to come on there and cook their food and sell. That was one event, but yeah, that is no more running. And another is the inverse community kitchen. So every weekend, I think it's every Sunday. I don't know whether that is still running or not.
I think it is. Yeah. No,
I think it is too.
Yeah. So those are the activities. But you know, if we could multiply, or if we could expand those areas, then, because you know it is necessary, because migrant people are increasing in the last 5 years. Especially after 2017, lots of the migrant people are coming here. Means, you know, our policy or our strategy in 2017 doesn't work in 2022. So yeah, they need more support.
Final two questions. First one is a specific, specifically relates to the urban realm and planning. What are the challenges for starting to move some of these things forward from a planning or a public realm perspective?
I picked up, I'm currently a parks planner at City of Launceston, so have been a town planner and now working in the parks and open space area, and sitting here we spoke a lot about events in parks, and so a lot of it is the planning scheme, like that's the legislation that we work under, and I just, being the parks planner at the moment, there's so many opportunities that I'm going to take away from today to kind of look at what we can do in the spaces that we do have, and those small wins. So whether it be even just doing an assessment of the open space that we have to be able to facilitate you know, more nighttime activities, more markets, and yeah, so I mean, as a planner.
There's also quite a bit of money going into greening of Launceston at the moment. So the uni is working with City of Launceston and the Chamber of Commerce to talk about increasing the amount of green space in the middle of the city, because you've got an opportunity there to do it.
Yeah.
And that's also an attractor. If you've got a lot more green canopy, you know, in summer nights when the sun's out, when it's light.
We talk
purpose.
I have one suggestion for her, like, you know, coming to the Launceston, I see if we go outside in the park, then there is a monkey park in the city of in the city park. That is so amazing. But you know, I was thinking about whether I could see kangaroo, because you know, kangaroo is very popular. Yeah, popular.
When I first arrived from Canada, they did have kangaroos down there. So you can come to my house, because they all come in at the end of the day.
But you know, I'm talking from the lens of the tourist. Like, you know, if someone come to Launceston and directly to the Launceston, maybe you know, some people might have visited other states and have seen the kangaroo, but frankly, you know, it's been 5 years living here, and I have not seen kangaroo close, except, you know, sometime while going to the what I saw in the road. Otherwise, you know, I have not seen any kangaroos even in the zoo here.
Go to Trowana in the park up near Bow Creek. Great, wonderful. Come round to my place.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
I've got patamelons running through the front yard.
So that doesn't associate with the loss of cost, I think, you know. if we could make one more space in the city park or in the Wilburn Park or any park in the Launceston, then there is more likely that people might get engaged there.
I would say, just coming back to your question,
Yes.
the planning, the only thing that really stands in the way is just the will of the community. If the community have the will for something and there's enough of the community that wants something, it'll happen. So it's only a matter of time.
I disagree a bit on that though, because I think we talked a lot at our table about cultural change and, you know, parklets require cultural change. People using public transport requires cultural change. But decision makers need to start thinking, how do I say yes to this instead of what are the reasons why I should say no? And I think that's, we both have a responsibility on that, because it's very easy. I mean, you talk about if the community wants something enough, it'll happen. I reckon there's someone in council or state government or federal government who can give you a dozen reasons why you can say no to it. And so we need to start changing that.
Sorry, I'm just going to let John speak.
It's a nice lead in, Jess, because if you wait for the community, it'll never happen. You can't wait, you have to lead, and you have to do the hard yards and really make the argument.
And be a bit brave. I think sometimes we need to be prepared to...
Yeah, you have to be very brave. There's plenty of opportunities to go to look at other examples of things that have worked and use them as an opportunity to present a case. Now, there's two examples that came to mind when I thought about coming down here. Now, Jaime can't answer this question, but do people know where Sol Square is?
Spelled how?
S-O-L.
No.
Well, there's only one left that I know of, and that's in Madrid. It's enormous. It's the most beautiful big square, but there used to be...
we thought you meant...
But it's the most beautiful square, and it takes the last of the light every day, and people flock to it to capture the light. But in Christchurch, before the earthquake, there were a lot of Victorian buildings that were deemed unsafe for habitation, business buildings. Yes. And but an entrepreneur there went and secured the buildings, and it was basically a crossroad of lanes, and became Sol Square, and it became the hub of nightlife in Christchurch. Now, unfortunately, the 2011 earthquake damaged most of those Victorian buildings, and there's been a long fight over Sol Square, and half of it's been knocked down, but it's a huge loss. But they had half of a mini miner up on the wall. They had a series of bikes there. It was the most wonderful place, and it was because somebody decided that they were going to take a punt and use the existing infrastructure they had, and one of the most enjoyable places I've ever visited. The second one, which is completely different, is you might have heard of the meat market. Where do you think meat market is?
Sydney?
No, New York. Well, actually, the meat market I'm thinking of... Meat Packers. Meat Packers area in New York. No, that's not the one I'm thinking of, because that's an upmarket place where you pay $25 for a cup of coffee. But in Copenhagen, they've got a heritage overlay over the meat market, which is almost central Copenhagen, and it's buildings that are non-consequential to look at. They're 1- and 2-story buildings where they used to make salami and stuff like that. And also, one of the main streets is called Slaughter Gaza, so that tells you what they did there as well. But they've opened it up as a nighttime food environment. So some of the places there are pricey, and some of them are like your neighbour's set up a barbecue and he's selling, kebabs off it. And it's packed because there's a lot of parking there, and parking in Copenhagen, good grief. If you live in, Copenhagen's not like a compact city by any standards, it's a series of villages. And the central Copenhagen's, you know, old, and that's what everyone goes to visit, but the rest of Copenhagen's the whole peninsula. And for people to come into town is actually quite a travel. But to be able to drive there is quite, and park is quite convenient. If you go there on any day, you can get basically a pulse in a roll, which is a sausage in a roll. You can get Warthogs is the big, probably the busiest one. It's like a pork bar where you get pork, but there's everything else there, and there's still empty buildings in there because it's such a big area, and they've made it accessible. There's a deliberate policy. These buildings are heritage. How are we going to use them? We're not going to knock them down, even though it's the most valuable real estate on the planet almost now. We're going to keep them, but how do we use it? So they've allowed, over time, allowed it to be used for this purpose, and you get a lot of city workers come down after work, and then you get families, we talked about families, come in for the evening meal, and I didn't stay up late enough to see what happens after that. But you look for the infrastructure you've got, and then you make the rules for the infrastructure. We say, well, what can planners do? Well, if you think about the planning scheme and say, what can you do? You're not going to do much. You look at the planning scheme and say, how can I change the planning scheme to allow for innovation? Then you can do something. But I think by attracting by looking for you've got to start with the idea. You start with the idea. If you can find a precinct or an area that meets some criteria that might make it work, you build the idea and then you make it work that way.
Thank you. Kim, final word to you. Just increase your risk appetite.
Same thing.
Yeah. Just increase your risk appetite. And Jess and I were talking, and it said, you know, let's become a can-do culture rather than a can't-do culture. Rather than putting hurdles up, saying, how can we do that? Okay, there's something here, but how do we get around it? So let's all turn into this sort of can-do culture, and it's amazing what we can achieve.
Yes, and not yes, but.
Okay. Yeah. Yes.